Imagine checking into a hotel where perfect manners matter almost as much as survival. The carpets are immaculate, the service is legendary, the guests expect miracles, and one employee seems capable of solving any problem with charm, confidence, and an almost ridiculous attention to detail. Then a wealthy guest dies, a priceless work of art changes hands, and suddenly this elegant place becomes the center of a criminal mystery. Can you guess the movie already, or do you need a few more clues? Here is your first challenge: do not focus only on the crime. This story looks like a mystery for a while, but it is also a friendship story, a memory, a comedy, and a farewell to a disappearing world. The movie keeps moving between elegance and chaos. 1 minute, everything feels carefully arranged. The next, people are running from the law, arguing over an inheritance, hiding valuable objects, or trying to stay one step ahead of men who have very little patience for good manners. At the center of the story is a famous hotel in a fictional European country. It sits in the mountains and has the kind of reputation that makes wealthy travelers return year after year. In its best days, the place is more than somewhere to sleep. It is a little universe with its own rules, rituals, hierarchy, secrets, and social language. The staff know how to anticipate what guests want before the guests finish asking. And the person who seems to understand this world better than anyone is the hotel's celebrated concierge. Do you have a guess yet? If you are thinking of a horror movie about a strange hotel, move away from that idea. The building is important, but there are no supernatural rooms waiting to swallow the guests. If you are thinking of a tense thriller about someone trapped inside a hotel, that is not it either. This hotel is a stage where a much larger adventure begins, and the tone is far more playful even when the situation becomes genuinely dangerous. The concierge is a remarkable figure. He is polished, demanding, theatrical, loyal to his profession, and completely convinced that civilization can be maintained through standards. He cares about appearance, timing, language, perfume, table manners, and the correct way to treat a guest. He can be vain. He can be outrageous. He can also be unexpectedly brave. Most important of all, he becomes a mentor to a very young employee who has just arrived at the hotel with almost nothing. That young employee starts near the bottom of the hierarchy. He watches, listens, learns quickly, and becomes the concierge's most trusted companion. Their relationship is one of the biggest clues in the entire movie. Think about films built around an odd mentor, and Protégé pairing an experienced professional who seems to know every rule of his world, and a quiet newcomer who gradually becomes essential to him. But in this case, the profession is not espionage, law enforcement, magic, or crime. It is hospitality. Now ask yourself, what kind of movie could turn hotel service into the beginning of an adventure? The answer lies partly in the guests. The concierge has a special talent for making certain older, extremely wealthy visitors feel seen, admired, and important. One of these guests is particularly devoted to him. Their connection is personal enough that when she leaves the hotel, there is a sense that they will meet again. But not long afterward, news arrives that she has died. That death changes everything. The concierge and his young assistant travel to the woman's family home, where relatives and legal representatives have gathered to hear what will happen to an enormous fortune. This is not a warm family reunion. Money has a way of making politeness disappear, and the relatives are already suspicious of anyone who might receive something they believe belongs to them. Then the will produces a surprise. The concierge has been left a highly valuable Renaissance painting. If you just moved closer to the answer, good. A famous hotel, a meticulous concierge, a young lobby employee, a wealthy woman, and a painting at the center of an inheritance dispute. That combination is becoming specific, but do not lock in your answer unless you are confident, because the movie still has several layers that can lead you somewhere else. The painting is not simply expensive decoration. It becomes a symbol of the entire conflict. The family wants control. The concierge believes the gift is legitimate. The young employee is pulled into a dispute that is much bigger than his job description. And rather than waiting patiently for every legal question to be settled, the two men make a bold decision about the artwork. From that moment on, the story accelerates. What began as a visit connected to a funeral turns into a race involving accusations, pursuit, secrecy, and a growing sense that someone is willing to go very far to control the inheritance. Here is an important clue about the movie's style: the danger is real, but the storytelling often refuses to behave like a conventional dark thriller. Serious events can be followed by dry humor. Formal conversations can turn absurd. A chase can feel almost like something from an old adventure serial. Even threatening characters exist inside a world that feels unusually designed and controlled. The film knows that history is becoming darker around its characters, yet it keeps finding comedy in human vanity, professionalism, panic, loyalty, and bad timing. The concierge soon becomes more than an unpopular beneficiary. Suspicion grows around the wealthy woman's death, and he finds himself treated as a possible criminal. This gives you another piece of the puzzle: the hero is not a detective trying to solve a murder from the outside. He is someone caught inside the consequences of a death, with powerful people ready to believe the worst about him. His young companion remains loyal, even when loyalty becomes risky. At this point, you may be thinking of a stylish murder mystery. That is close in one sense, but the film does not spend its energy on a traditional list of suspects sitting in a room while clues are explained. Instead, the mystery sends the characters into motion. They travel, hide things, seek help, escape trouble, and rely on a network of people whose professional loyalty turns out to be surprisingly useful. The question is not only who caused the death. The question is whether the two central characters can survive the machinery that starts moving against them. There is also another relationship quietly growing beside the main friendship. The young hotel employee falls in love with a young woman who works in a pastry shop. She is talented, practical, and brave, and she becomes connected to the adventure in ways that make desserts much more important than you would normally expect in a crime story. Keep that clue in your pocket. Pastries are not the first thing most people associate with criminal escape plans, but in this movie, beautifully prepared boxes of sweets become part of the visual language of the story. Still unsure? Let us widen the lens. The country is fictional, but the historical atmosphere is recognizable. The story takes place in a version of Central or Eastern Europe during a period when old social traditions are being threatened by aggressive political forces. Military uniforms, border checks, papers, and the language of authority begin to intrude on the hotel's carefully maintained world. The concierge keeps behaving as though courtesy and culture can hold chaos at the door. The movie gradually shows that they cannot. That contrast is essential. The hotel represents an idea of civilization, imperfect, artificial, sometimes ridiculous, but built around service, memory, ceremony, and human connection. Outside, a harsher order is arriving. The movie never turns into a history lecture, and the fictional country gives it distance from exact events, but you can feel Europe changing around the characters. What looks at first like a colorful caper slowly reveals a melancholy side. Have you guessed it now? If yes, test your theory against the structure of the story. This is not told as a simple present tense adventure from beginning to end. The movie is interested in memory and in the way stories survive the people who lived them. We encounter the famous hotel in more than one era. At one point it is glamorous, crowded, and full of ceremony. At another, it has aged into something quieter and less fashionable. The past feels brighter not only because of how it looked, but because someone remembers it that way. A writer becomes part of the framing of the story. He encounters an older man connected to the hotel and learns how this once magnificent place came to mean so much to him. That older man's memories take us back to his youth, when he was the inexperienced employee learning from the legendary concierge. So the adventure you are trying to identify is also a story being handed from one person to another. A hotel becomes a container for memory, and the movie itself feels like an attempt to preserve a vanished era through storytelling. That should eliminate quite a few possibilities. We are looking for a film with a nested narrative, a fictional European setting, an extravagant mountain hotel, a master concierge. His young protégé, a disputed inheritance, a valuable painting, a suspicious death, a pastry shop connection, and the shadow of political upheaval. If you know the movie, you probably see its visual world in your head by now. But let us keep going, because some of the best clues are not plot points at all. Think about precision. In this film, rooms, uniforms, luggage, elevators, hallways, cakes, documents, and even facial hair can feel arranged with almost mathematical care. Characters move through spaces that often look more like illustrations or miniature theaters than ordinary reality. The movie changes its visual presentation depending on the era being shown, reinforcing the feeling that we are opening different layers of a storybook. You do not need to know anything about filmmaking to notice that the world has been deliberately composed. The humor works the same way. People often speak with confidence while the situation around them becomes increasingly ridiculous. Formality survives in places where formality should probably be the least important concern. The concierge can worry about standards even while facing arrest, pursuit, or political intimidation. The young employee, meanwhile, often reacts with a steadier practicality. Together they form an entertaining balance. One man performs civilization at full volume, while the other quietly helps keep him alive. There is a deeper reason their friendship matters. The younger man is not simply learning how to carry luggage or welcome guests. He is being invited into a code. The concierge believes that how you treat people matters, even when the surrounding world rewards force and cruelty. He is flawed and sometimes absurd, but he repeatedly demonstrates loyalty to those he considers part of his world. The young employee remembers that loyalty long after the glamorous version of the hotel is gone. This is why the movie is harder to classify than its plot summary suggests. Call it a comedy, and you miss the danger. Call it a crime film, and you miss the tenderness. Call it an adventure, and you miss the sadness. Call it a historical story, and you ignore the fact that its country is invented and its history is filtered through memory. The movie keeps several tones in motion at once, and that makes it perfect for a guessing game. Every clue points in a direction, but no single genre label gives the whole answer away. Let us return to the crime. The family dispute is not handled through polite negotiation alone. A frightening enforcer begins removing obstacles and intimidating people connected to the inheritance. Again, we will keep the details non-graphic because the important clue is not how anyone is harmed. The important clue is the tonal contrast. A pastel-colored, meticulously ordered world contains a villain who seems to have stepped in from a much colder movie. His presence makes the central pair's situation much more urgent. Meanwhile, the concierge's legal trouble leads to confinement, but even that does not stop the story from becoming strangely funny. He adapts his social skills to a completely different environment and finds allies where you might not expect them. The young employee works from the outside to help him. Their efforts eventually require planning, cooperation, and a very unconventional use of items connected to that pastry shop I mentioned earlier. If you are thinking that has to be the one, hold your answer for a moment. Here comes another clue. The film contains a secret professional brotherhood of sorts, but it is not made of spies, assassins, thieves, or superheroes. It is made of hotel concierges. When one of their own needs help, an informal network across prestigious hotels becomes a source of information and assistance. It is a wonderfully specific joke, but it also fits the movie's larger belief in professional loyalty and old-fashioned codes of conduct. That network is one of the strongest clues because very few films treat hospitality staff as if they belong to an international order capable of mobilizing during a crisis. If your answer includes secret agents, you are still on the wrong track. These men are experts in reservations, discretion, guest preferences, and connections. Yet in this strange adventure, those skills become almost heroic. The young employee also has a personal history that gives the political setting more weight. He is an immigrant and an outsider. He has already lost much before arriving at the hotel, which helps explain why the place and the people he finds there become so important. His mentor can be self-centered, but when authorities treat the younger man unfairly, the concierge's loyalty becomes immediate and personal. Beneath the comedy, the film makes a clear distinction between polished manners as decoration and genuine decency when it costs something. Now notice how many kinds of value are competing in this story. There is financial value, money, inheritance, property. There is artistic value, the painting everyone wants. There is social value, reputation, status, family name. There is professional value, the concierge standards. And then there is emotional value, friendship, love, memory, and the meaning of a place that survives after its fashionable era has ended. The film keeps asking, without turning the question into a speech, which of these things people are willing to protect. The painting is especially funny in this respect. To the family, it is part of wealth and legacy. To the concierge, it is a gift and therefore a matter of principle. To everyone chasing it, it becomes evidence, leverage, treasure, and trouble. But the movie never asks you to admire the artwork for 10 minutes. It uses the object the way a great adventure story uses a map, a jewel, or a secret document, as something simple enough to follow and complicated enough to make everyone reveal who they are. Do you have your final guess? Not yet. Then picture the central setting more clearly. It is a grand resort high in the mountains of an invented European republic. In its glory days, the building is associated with rich colors, elaborate decor, uniformed staff, old elevators, formal dining, and the sense that every guest has entered a carefully rehearsed performance. Decades later, the same place looks tired and transformed, and its owner seems almost like the guardian of a memory no one else fully understands. The story's emotional center is not really the question of who owns the hotel. It is why someone would keep returning to a place after the world that made it glamorous has disappeared. The answer is tied to love, loss, friendship, and the few years when the young employee felt that he belonged to something extraordinary. That is why the older version of him tells the story. He is not simply explaining property. He is explaining why memory can make an old building more valuable than any inheritance. This is also where the title, Once You Know It, becomes more meaningful. The hotel is not just background. It is the name people remember, the institution around which the characters' lives intersect, and the object that connects different generations of storytellers. The movie could have been named after the painting or the concierge, but it is named after the place that contains everyone's memories. Let me give you a few rapid clues now. The main pair are a legendary concierge and a young lobby boy. A wealthy guest leaves the concierge a Renaissance painting. Her family is furious. A suspicious death creates legal danger. A pastry shop and its carefully packaged sweets become unexpectedly useful. A network of concierges provides assistance. The fictional country is being pushed toward authoritarian rule. The hotel is shown both in its glamorous past and in a faded later period. A writer hears the story from the man who once served there as a boy. If you still have not guessed, here is one of the strongest visual clues I can give without saying the title. The film's most famous version of the hotel looks almost like an enormous confection placed against snowy mountains, elegant, theatrical, and deliberately unreal. The world around it mixes storybook charm with the anxiety of Europe between wars. Even viewers who forget the details of the inheritance often remember the building, the uniforms, the desserts, the painting, and the perfectly controlled compositions. And here is another. The central concierge is intensely concerned with a particular fragrance and with maintaining standards of personal presentation. His devotion to refinement can seem comic, but it becomes part of his resistance to a world growing more brutal. He behaves as though civilization is something you practice every day, through small choices, even when history is making those choices look hopelessly fragile. That fragility is the secret emotional clue. The movie is fun, fast, and often absurd, but underneath the caper is a sense that the era being remembered is already gone. The young employee will outlive his mentor. The hotel will change. Borders and governments will change. The people who once filled the lobby will disappear. What remains is a story told years later about a brief period when friendship and loyalty created a home for someone who had lost one. So before I reveal the answer, make your final choice. Think about every clue together rather than grabbing only one. The mountain hotel, the legendary concierge, the young immigrant lobby boy, the wealthy older guest, the inheritance battle, the Renaissance painting, the accusation that turns the concierge into a fugitive, the pastry boxes. The professional network of hotel staff, the fictional European Republic, and the story being remembered decades later. Read. The movie is the Grand Budapest Hotel, released in 2014. The biggest clues were the celebrated concierge and his young lobby boy Protégé, the valuable painting inherited from a wealthy guest. The family conflict that follows, the pastry shop connection, and the Grand Mountain Hotel whose glamorous past survives mainly through memory. The fictional European setting and the approaching political darkness were also major signals, because they turn what could have been a simple comic crime story into something more bittersweet. Now tell me in the comments, which clue gave it away for you? Was it the painting, the pastries, the secret network of concierges, the fictional European country, or did you recognize the hotel almost immediately? And if you guessed it before the inheritance clue, you definitely know this movie well.